Theseus. The Muses sang of Heracles and his labors, and they also sang of the island of Crete, ruled by King Minos, the son of Zeus and Europa. His queen, Pasiphae, a daughter of the sun god Helios, had a golden glimmer in her eyes, like all the descendants of the sun, and was accustomed to great magnificence. King Minos wanted his queen to live in a palace as splendid as her father's, and he adored Daedalus, an Athenian architect and inventor of marvelous skill, to build the great palace of Knossos. The palace rose up story upon story over a forest of columns. Winding stairs and intricate passageways connected the many halls and courtyards. Pictures were painted on the walls of the great halls, fountains splashed in the courtyards, and the bathrooms even had running water. Bulls' horns of the purest gold crowned the roofs, for the Cretans worshipped the bull, since Zeus, in the shape of a bull, had brought Europa to the island. Here the king and the queen and all their court lived in the great splendor and happiness, until one day Poseidon sent a snow-white bull from the sea. Since the island of Crete was completely surrounded by his domain, the sea, he wanted too to be honored, and ordered King Minos to sacrifice the bull to him. But Queen Pasiphae was so taken by the beauty of the white bull that she persuaded the king to let it live. She admired the bull so much that she ordered Daedalus to construct a hollow wooden cow, so she could hide inside it and enjoy the beauty of the bull at close range. Poseidon was very angry, and for punishment he made the bull mad. It ravaged the whole island, and though the Cretans were great bullfighters, no one could subdue the beast until Heracles had come to capture it for one of his labors. To punish the king and queen, Poseidon caused Pasiphae to give birth to a monster, the Minotaur. He was half man, half bull, and ate nothing but human flesh. Such a fearful monster would not go free, and the clever Daedalus constructed for him a labyrinth under the palace. It was a maze of passageways and little rooms from which nobody could ever hope to find his way out. There the Minotaur was shut in, and as long as he was provided with victims to devour, he kept quiet. When he was hungry, he bellowed so loudly that the whole palace shook. King Minos had to wage war with the neighboring islands so he could supply the Minotaur with the prisoners of war for food. When a son of Minos visited Athens and was accidentally killed, the King Minos used this as an excuse to threaten to sack the city unless seven Athenian maidens and seven Athenian youths were sent to Crete to be sacrificed to the Minotaur every 9 years. To save his city, Aegeus, the king of Athens, had to consent, for Minos was much stronger than he. The people of Athens grumbled for a while. King Aegeus was childless and had nothing to lose. They had to see their sons and daughters sacrificed to the cruel Minotaur. 2 times 9 years had passed, and the king was growing old. For the 3rd time a ship with black sails of mourning was due to depart, when word came to the king that a young hero, Theseus, from Trozen, was making his way to Athens, destroying all the monsters and highwaymen he met on the road. When King Aegeus heard that his old heart beat faster. His old heart beat faster. Once in his youth he had visited Trozen and had been secretly married to Prince Aethra. He did not bring Aethra back to Athens with him, but before he left he said to her, "Should you bear me a son, and should he grow up strong enough to lift this boulder upon which I hide my sword and golden sandals, send him to me, for then he will be worthy their heir to the throne of Athens." King Aegeus in those days was known for his great strength. Theseus, the young hero, arrived in Athens and went straight to the king's palace. Tall and handsome, he stood before Aegeus with the sandals and the sword, and the king was overjoyed. At last he had a son who was a hero as well. The king happily proclaimed Theseus the rightful heir to the throne of Athens, and he became the hero of all Athens when he offered to take the place of one of the victims who were to be sent to Crete. Old King Aegeus begged his son not to go, but Theseus would not change his mind. "I shall make an end of the Minotaur, and we shall return safely," he said. "We sail with black sails, but we shall return with white sails as a signal of my success." The ship sailed to Crete, and the 14 young Athenians were locked in a dungeon to await their doom. But King Minos had a lovely daughter, Ariadne, as fair a maiden as eyes could see. She could not bear the thought that handsome Theseus should be sacrificed to the ugly Minotaur. She went to Daedalus and begged for help to save him. He gave Ariadne a magic ball of thread and told her that at midnight, when the Minotaur was fast asleep, she must take Theseus to the labyrinth. The magic ball of thread would roll ahead of him through the maze and lead him to the monster. And then it was up to Theseus to overpower the beast. In the dark of the night, Ariadne went to Theseus's prison and whispered that if he would promise to marry her and carry her away with him, she would help him. Gladly Theseus gave his word, and Ariadne led him to the gate of the labyrinth, tied the end of the thread to the gate so he would find his way back, and gave him the ball. As soon as Theseus put the ball of thread on the ground, it rolled ahead of him through the dark corridors, upstairs, downstairs, and around winding passageways. Holding onto the unwinding thread, Theseus followed it wherever it led him, and before long he heard the thunderous snoring of the Minotaur. And there, surrounded by skulls and bleached bones, lay the monster fast asleep. Theseus sprang at the Minotaur. It roared so loudly that the whole palace of Knossos shook. But the monster was taken by surprise, and so strong was Theseus that, with his bare hands, he killed the cruel Minotaur. Theseus quickly followed the thread back to Ariadne, who stood watch at the gate. Together they freed the other Athenians and ran to their ship in the harbor. Before they sailed, they bored holes in all the King Minos' ships so he could not pursue them. Ariadne urged them to hurry, for even she could not save them from Talos, the bronze robot who guarded the island. If he should see their ship leaving, he would throw rocks at it and sink it. Should one of them manage to swim ashore, Talos would throw himself into a blazing bonfire until he was red hot. Then he would burn the survivors to ash in a fiery embrace. They should already hear his clanking steps, when just in time they hoisted their sail, and a brisk wind blew them out to sea. In their rush they forgot to hoist the white sail of victory instead of the black sail of mourning. Theseus' heart was filled with joy. Not only had he saved the Athenians from the Minotaur, he was also bringing a beautiful bride home to Athens. But in the middle of the night the god Dionysus appeared to him and spoke. "I forbid you to marry Ariadne. I myself have chosen her for my bride. You must set her ashore on the island of Naxos." Theseus could not oppose an Olympian god. When they came to Naxos, he ordered everyone to go ashore and rest. There Ariadne fell into a heavy slumber, and while she slept, Theseus led the others back to the ship, and they sailed off without her. Poor Ariadne wept bitterly when she awoke and found herself deserted. Little did she suspect that the handsome stranger who came walking toward her was the god Dionysus, that it was he who had ordered Theseus to abandon her. The god gently dried her tears and gave her a drink from the cup in his hand, and right away the sadness left her. She smiled up at the god, and he put a crown of sparkling jewels on her head and made her his bride. They lived happily together for many years, and their sons became kings of the surrounding islands. Dionysus loved Ariadne greatly, and when she died, he put her jeweled crown in the sky as a constellation so she would never be forgotten. Theseus, in his grief at having lost Ariadne, again forgot to hoist the white sail. When King Aegeus saw the black-sailed ship returning from Crete, he threw himself into the sea in despair. Theseus inherited his father's throne, and he and all Athens mourned the loss of the old king, and in his honor named the sea in which he had drowned the Aegean. King Minos was beside himself with fury when he discovered that his daughter had fled with the Athenians. He knew that no one but the brilliant Daedalus could have helped Theseus unravel the mystery of the labyrinth, so Daedalus was kept a prisoner in the palace and treated very harshly. Daedalus could not bear to be locked up and let his talents go to waste. Secretly he made 2 sets of wings, one pair for himself and one pair for his son Icarus. They were cleverly fashioned of feathers set in beeswax. He showed his son how to use them and warned him not to go fly too high, or the heat of the sun would melt the wax. Then he led him up to the highest tower and flapped their wings. They flew off like 2 birds. Neither King Minos nor Talos, the robot, could stop their flight. Young and foolish, Icarus could not resist the temptation to rise ever higher into the sky. The whole world seemed at his feet. He flew too close to the sun, and the wax began to melt. The feathers came loose, the wings fell apart, and Icarus plunged into the sea and drowned. Sadly, Daedalus flew on alone and came to the island of Sicily. His fame had flown ahead of him, and the king of Sicily welcomed him warmly, for he too wanted a splendid palace and bathrooms with running water. As soon as King Minos' ships were mended, he set off in pursuit of Daedalus, the cunning craftsman. He sailed east and he sailed west, and when he came to the Sicilian shore and saw the wondrous palace going up, he had no doubts who was building it. But the king of Sicily hid Daedalus and denied that he had him in his service. Slyly, King Minos sent a conch shell up to the palace, where a message that if anyone could pull a thread through the windings of the conch, he would give back a sack of gold as a reward. The king of Sicily asked Daedalus to solve the problem. Daedalus thought for a while, then he tied a silken thread to an ant, put the ant at one end of the conch shell, and a bit of honey at the other end. The ant smelled the honey and found its way through the conch, pulling the thread along with it. When King Minos saw that, he demanded the immediate surrender of Daedalus, for now he had proof that the king of Sicily was hiding him. Nobody but Daedalus could have threaded the conch. The king of Sicily had to give in. He invited Minos to a feast, promising to surrender Daedalus, as was the custom. King Minos took a bath before the feast, but when he stepped into the fabulous bath that Daedalus had built, boiling water rushed out of the tap and scalded him to death. And Daedalus remained for the rest of his life at the court of the king of Sicily.